This is Rose Bonhomme's Looking into Spiegelman and Fullman, a comparative analysis film essay. Are victims and perpetrators ever alike? Following the events of the Holocaust, there has been a growing desire to gaze at the event of political violence. Thus, media regarding political violence, such as the Hollywood blockbuster Schindler's List, started categorizing the various actors as either victims or perpetrators. These labels create polarizing and one-dimensional archetypes that unfairly simplify, mislead, and undermine the roles played in instances of political violence. However, this flawed narrative is contradicted by the many similarities Ari Folman and Art Spiegelman share. Despite Spiegelman being a widely recognized second-generation victim of the Holocaust and Folman as an implicated bystander in the Beirut massacre. Bowman and Spiegelman are both marked by post-memory, or what Marianne Hirsch, a professor of English and comparative literature at Columbia University, describes as the experience of those who grew up dominated by narratives that preceded their birth, whose own belated stories are shaped by traumatic events that can neither be fully understood nor recreated. As a result, the themes found in their creative works, specifically Spiegelman's graphic memoir Maus, A Survivor's Tale, and Folman's animated war documentary Waltz with Bashir, reflect the urge to recall, reconstruct, and reconcile with their past. Recalling identity. There is a strong sense of estrangement in Maus and Waltz with Bashir, which is conveyed through the interviews that both artists conduct. While the interviews initially seem to only serve one purpose, to depict past events upon closer inspection, it becomes apparent that they also serve to bridge the distance between memory and post-memory. Spiegelman's identity as a second-generation survivor plays a huge role in Maus. While Vladek's interviews center only on the Holocaust, Art's parallel narrative addresses the many ways in which the conflict has impacted Vladek in his later years, as well as how the war has shaped Art's connection with both his father and his own Jewish identity. The Holocaust's repercussions can be seen in practically every element of Vladek's character and life, and this has a significant influence on his connection with his son. It is apparent from the novel's first scene, in which Vladek scoffs when his young son refers to the neighboring boys as friends and encourages Art to lock them together in a room with no food for a week to verify their friendship's validity, that Spiegelman's entire life has been shaped by the tragedies that befell his father during the war. While Folman too bears the weight of being a second-generation Holocaust survivor, he is also an implicated bystander in the massacre of numerous Palestinians. Throughout the film, Waltz with Bashir, Folman struggles with his participation in the Lebanon War. He feels trapped by his circumstances, which is highlighted in the narrative he creates through his interviews. Each former soldier emphasizes how they lacked understanding of their intended roles when they first enlisted. This can be particularly seen when Ronnie Diag reminisces his time as a soldier. In this scene, Ronnie and his squadron are depicted to be blissfully ignorant. Their time manning their tank is seemingly reduced to a fun outing as they laugh and take selfies. The upbeat music accompanying this segment only further underscores the jovial mood. However, the abrupt violence ending the peaceful scene shocks both the soldiers and the audience, and it quickly becomes apparent that the soldiers were completely unprepared for warfare and unaware of the consequences their actions would bring. The interview brings acknowledgement to how the aftermath of the Holocaust impacted Folman as much as it did Spiegelman and many others. Reconstructing memory. Despite their radically different experiences, Folman and Spiegelman both use illustrations rather than literature or photographs to portray memories of political violence. As W.J.T. Mitchell explains in his book, Picture Theory Essays on Verbal and Visual Representation, 1995, photographs seem to be marked by objective truth, but they can often be deceiving or inaccurate. Similarly, literature also faces the limits of space and writerly ingenuity. Since illustrations have total control over showing people and locations that don't exist or have been altered through time, Folman and Spiegelman are able to creatively express their trauma. In Maus, when Spiegelman recreates his father's adventures, he takes many artistic liberties, the most noticeable one being how he portrays characters as anamorphosized animals. Jews are shown as mice, Germans as cats, non-Jewish Americans as dogs, Poles as pigs, and so on and so forth. These illustrations give Spiegelman the freedom to relay not only his father Vladek's narrative, but also his interpretation of it. The manner each character and setting is shown in Art's Maus is also crucial to how these memories are conveyed. Art recognizes that he was not present at his father's trials. And he also recognizes that his scenarios might not be realistic, thus, the characters reflect this belief. Likewise, in Waltz with Bashir, Fullman's decision to use animation allows him to play with surrealism when portraying the memories, dreams, as well as experiences soldiers had from the Lebanon War. A prominent example of this is when Fullman starts having a recurring vision of his time serving in the military. The vision depicts a disturbing scene of Fullman and other troops rising naked from the Black Sea in a trance-like state. Viewers then watch as the soldiers march solemnly towards a city lighted by flares while wielding machine weapons. This vision is enhanced by the animation technique and lighting, which gives the events described an eerie sheen. The vision's surrealism is an interpretation of how Fullman, similar to Spiegelman, envisions a past that he feels disconnected from, and furthermore allows the audience to comprehend how memory is largely influenced by imagination. Reconciling guilt. In her essay, Past Lives, Post-Memory and Exile, Hirsch explains that memory is necessarily an act not only of recall but also of mourning, which can lead to reconciliation. Throughout their respective works, Fullman and Spiegelman are both forced to confront their guilt, which then gives them closure. In Maus, Spiegelman feels guilt over the fact that he believes that he has not been a decent son to his father. It is evident from the opening panel of Book 1 that the two of them don't get along and don't see each other very frequently, despite living close to one another. When Art is with his father, he's always on edge, and it feels as though an argument may start at any time. Indeed, confrontations frequently erupt over small issues such as Art's cigarette ash on the carpet or Vladik's confession that he has burnt Anya's war journals. Spiegelman even expresses this guilt when he meets with Pavel, his psychiatrist, who is also a Holocaust survivor. Pavel speculates that Art is remorseful for portraying his father in a negative manner in his book Maus, and that Vladik feels guilty himself for escaping Auschwitz while so many others died, and has been unconsciously transmitting this guilt onto his son. Spiegelman's confrontation of this guilt has enabled him to gain a greater understanding of his father, and finally resolve the deeply conflicted feelings he's had towards him. Comparably, Fullman also comes to terms with his guilt through the help of a professional. Confused by his vivid yet vague memories of his time as a soldier, Fullman seeks out his friend, Ori Sivan, who also happens to be a psychologist. It is when Fullman interviews Sivan that it is revealed that these false memories may not be an accurate representation of what happened, but instead address issues that are very important to Ari's inner world. Despite being the child of Holocaust survivors, when Fullman enacted his civic duty as an Israeli citizen, he inadvertently became a perpetrator himself, or as Ori Savan explains it, he unwillingly took on a role of a Nazi. This revelation allowed Fullman to start his journey of recollection and remember his duty in the war, as well as the severity of his actions. Additionally, his newfound understanding of himself and his participation in the Beirut massacre gave him the ability to eventually come to terms with his role as a perpetrator. So can perpetrators and victims ever be alike? According to Waltz with Bashir and Maus's Survivor's Tale, this would seem to be true. By analyzing Ari Fullman and Art Spiegelman's illustrated works, it becomes apparent that both Spiegelman and Fullman were greatly impacted by post-memory. Waltz with Bashir and Maus displayed how the events of the Holocaust caused the two artists to be in a state of dysphoria, as well as be constantly racked by survivor's guilt. Furthermore, they also provided creative opportunities for Spiegelman and Fullman to connect with a past they felt distant from and address their trauma. Although these works did showcase personal narratives and could be prone to biases, they ultimately reveal how Art Spiegelman and Ari Fullman share similar experiences.